What you've come to accept as reality isn't the full picture. From the moment you took your first breath, you entered not a neutral world, but a designed one. A version of existence meant to narrow your perception and divert your attention from your inherent power. You were led to believe that your identity stops at the edge of your skin, that your reality is defined by what you can see, touch, or quantify. But that's only the surface layer. The real foundation of your life exists in the unseen, in an energetic fabric that moves around and within you every second, quietly shaping every experience you call reality. This isn't about mystical incense, magic stones, or ceremonial performances. This is about the forgotten architecture of what makes the universe tick, an intelligent, living consciousness field that ancient wisdom once understood and modern science is only beginning to rediscover. This field, what some traditions refer to as the AKASHIC or AKASHIC field, isn't folklore. It's a memory field, an informational matrix that contains the imprint of every emotion, every thought, and every event across all time. And you are already plugged into it. You may not have realized it, but your life has been unfolding within this energetic web all along. Every sensation you get when someone walks into a room and changes the emotional atmosphere without saying a single word, that's not intuition in the abstract. That's resonance. That uncomfortable pull in your chest when someone tells a lie, even when there's no evidence. That's energetic truth detection. And that inexplicable inner nudge you often brush off before making a choice, that's the field trying to get your attention. Not symbolically, but literally, is Netflix. We're living in a reality built from frequency and vibration. Information isn't just shared through words and actions. It moves silently, faster than thought, through waves, pulses, and energetic exchanges. Every part of your biology, from your neurons to your DNA, is in constant interaction with the energy around you. Not in metaphor, in mechanics. But the world you were born into didn't teach you this. Instead, it taught you to doubt what you couldn't measure, to trust only what could be categorized, tracked, or explained. That training wasn't accidental, it was systemic. You are conditioned to equate your worth with visible metrics. Your body, your appearance, your achievements, your productivity. But beneath all those identifiers, you are not the labels. You are a frequency, a signal. And that signal is constantly emitting into the environment around you, shaping your life, even if you're completely unaware of it. Your thoughts aren't just confined to your head. They are frequencies that radiate beyond your physical form. Your emotions aren't only chemical responses, they're vibrations that ripple through the field. Everything you think, feel, and believe becomes part of the data you're feeding into reality, and it affects what you attract, what you repel, and what you experience. Even now, you're already influencing energy. The only difference between where you are and where you could be is awareness. If you've ever walked into a room and suddenly felt exhausted or anxious without cause, that wasn't just social anxiety. That was a misalignment between your personal frequency and the energy present. If you've ever met someone and immediately trusted them with no logical reason, that wasn't mere coincidence. That was an energetic match, your field recognizing coherence in theirs. You are a living broadcast tower, constantly exchanging information with everything and everyone around you. And yet, instead of being taught how to use that gift, you were taught to ignore it. You were trained to anesthetize your deeper awareness with logic, noise, and skepticism. But that connection is still there. It's as real as the earth beneath your feet. Institutions like the HeartMath Institute have proven that the human heart produces a measurable electromagnetic field, one that extends several feet beyond the body and changes based on your emotional state. Studies in neuroscience, energy medicine, and quantum physics are confirming what sages and shamans have known for centuries. Energy is not a metaphor, it is the language of life. So, why weren't you taught this in school? Why isn't it common knowledge that our emotional and mental states shape the energetic field we live in? Because once people understand that their inner world has a direct impact on their external world, they stop being so easy to manipulate. They stop buying into fear. They stop being passive. They start taking responsibility. They become empowered in a way no structure of control can contain. This is why so many truths stay hidden in plain sight. Too disruptive to be mainstream. Too powerful to be widely accepted. That's why we created things like our Insights Academy. There are layers of truth that can't be shared openly on platforms designed to regulate perception. But if you're ready to reclaim your energetic intelligence, it's time to go deeper. Here's the thing. Reality isn't something that happens to you. It's something you influence. Every belief you hold, every thought you entertain, every emotion you dwell in is like tuning a radio to a particular station. You're not broken. You're not unlucky. You're simply misaligned. The energy you radiate determines the reality you receive. That internal chaos you often feel, it isn't because you're inherently flawed. It's because you've been conditioned to live in dissonance. Chronic noise in the mind, disconnection in the heart, distraction in the soul. And that dissonance keeps you from aligning with the field. It keeps you from feeling your way into clarity. It keeps you fragmented. Learning to consciously manage your energy field is not some spiritual hobby. It is a foundational life skill like breathing or eating, because when you finally learn how to bring your internal field into coherence, your external world begins to follow. The pieces start falling into place. Intuition sharpens. Resistance dissolves. Life starts working with you. But that's when everything begins to change. The AKASHIC field, long dismissed as myth or fantasy, isn't just some mystical concept. It's an intelligent system of memory and information that exists beyond time. It holds everything, your joys, your traumas, your choices. And it's not just recording them, it's reflecting them back to you. You're not only inside the field, you are of the field. Your very essence is a thread in the cosmic web. The name AKASHIC traces back to ancient Sanskrit and the element known as Akasha, the subtlest of all 5 elements in ancient Eastern philosophy. But this idea wasn't confined to the East. The Egyptians spoke of the memory of the gods. The Greeks called it the great unseen. Hermetic teachings referred to it as the all-pervading mind. Even pioneers of modern thought like Nikola Tesla, Carl Jung, and Edgar Cayce described a field of consciousness that exists beyond our normal senses. It was never a secret. It was just ignored, because the moment humanity realizes it can access information, healing, and transformation directly from the field, everything about how we relate to institutions of authority, governments, religions, corporations starts to unravel. This field is not just spiritual philosophy, it's scientific reality. Quantum physics, the holographic principle, and zero-point energy all point toward a universe where everything is interconnected, where information is non-local, and where consciousness is a key player. Some researchers even propose that empty space isn't empty at all. It's packed with encoded energy, with data waiting to be read. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? You don't need machines to connect to it. You need focus. You need presence. You need willingness. Because the field doesn't respond to status or credentials. It responds to alignment. And when your mind and emotions vibrate in harmony, when your energy is clear, coherent, and intentional, the field starts speaking. You begin to experience what some call downloads, moments of knowing without learning, clarity without explanation. These aren't fantasies. They're communications, not from outside you, but from a part of you that you've simply forgotten how to hear. You've had these experiences, those uncanny hunches that turn out to be right, those dreams that predicted something real, that sudden insight that solved a problem you'd been wrestling with for days, but you brushed them off because you were told they weren't real. That's the conditioning speaking. The field has always been talking. You just stopped listening, and now it's time to listen again. You don't need a robe, a candlelit cave, or a spiritual name to begin tuning into this deeper layer of existence. What you need is presence, a type of attention so clear, so undistracted, that it naturally aligns you with what's already there. The AKASHIC field doesn't hide from you. It's not a treasure locked away for the chosen few. It surrounds you constantly, humming just beneath the noise of your thoughts, waiting for you to quiet the static and simply feel it. From your earliest years, though, you were trained to block that signal. You were taught to ignore the felt sense of things, to rely only on what could be verified, to seek validation outside of yourself. The world didn't encourage you to develop inner awareness. It taught you to mistrust it. You were rewarded for regurgitating facts, not for perceiving energy. You were praised for compliance, not for intuition, and slowly. That deeper signal, the one that whispered through dreams, emotions, gut feelings, got buried beneath layers of programming. Children haven't lost this connection yet. Watch a child who hasn't been fully conditioned, and you'll see what it looks like to exist close to the field. They play freely with imagination, blur the line between dream and waking life, and respond to people's energy even before understanding language. They know when something feels off. They express their truth without apology. But over time, that clarity gets chiseled away. They're told what's real and what's ridiculous. They're taught to be logical, to stop daydreaming, to ask for proof before trusting themselves. By the time most people reach adulthood, they've learned to second-guess every inner signal. That flash of insight? Probably nothing. That strong emotional reaction? Just being dramatic. That recurring dream or vision? Just random neurons firing. The tools you were born with, your intuition, your sensitivity, your energetic awareness, became liabilities in a culture that only values the visible. Appropriate school systems play a big role in this. They were never designed to awaken the inner self. They were designed to produce predictable outcomes. Students who think alike, act alike, and don't question the framework that's been built around them. They don't teach you how to regulate your energy, how to read emotional frequency, or how to communicate with the deeper layers of reality. They teach you how to memorize and repeat. They teach you how to sit still and wait for instruction. They teach you how to suppress the wildness of inner knowing in favor of external approval. Your imagination, the part of your mind capable of exploring the field, gets downgraded to idle fantasy. Your deep feelings are labeled as mood swings. Your intuitive flashes get dismissed as guesswork. And every time you go along with that, your connection to the field becomes fainter. Not because it's gone, but because the signal is being drowned out by static. Then you grow up, and the static only gets louder. Media steps in to finish the job, blasting your nervous system with noise, drama, and stimulation. News cycles keep you anxious. Social media keeps you comparing. Advertising tells you what's missing in your life, and then sells you the illusion of a fix. But none of it is designed to bring you inward. In fact, it's engineered to keep you facing outward, always searching, never still enough to tune in. Every time you reach for a screen instead of sitting with a sensation. Every time you chase distraction instead of listening to your body's quiet guidance, you're reinforcing the disconnect. It's not just the media you consume. It's the language you hear and use. How many times have you heard, "That's just your imagination," or "You're being too sensitive"? These aren't just dismissive phrases. They're reprogramming commands. They teach you to mistrust the very parts of yourself that are closest to the field. Sensitivity is not a flaw. It's perception. Intuition is not weakness. It's wisdom. But when you've been taught to mute those aspects of yourself, you begin to doubt your own experience. You look around at a chaotic world and think the confusion is inside you. You believe you're out of sync because you're broken, but it's the world that's out of alignment, not your awareness. Even science, as respected and celebrated as it is, plays a role in this misdirection. While certain branches, quantum physics, consciousness studies, neuroscience, are beginning to uncover the reality of energetic influence, most of what reaches the mainstream clings to outdated materialism. Consciousness is treated as a byproduct of brain chemistry. Intuition is reduced to evolutionary instinct. Energy fields are ignored unless they can be turned into technology or profit. Why? Because accepting the reality of the AKASHIC field and the role of human consciousness in shaping it would overturn the entire structure of knowledge as we've been taught. It would make the individual powerful, not in a political sense, but in an energetic one. And that power is unpredictable, unmanageable, free. When you believe that your mind is simply a receiver for external reality, you become passive. When you understand that your thoughts, your emotional states, your intentions are shaping reality in real time, you become sovereign. And sovereign beings don't wait for instructions. They don't blindly follow. They create. That's why your belief system was engineered, not to reflect reality, but to manage your perception. Because once you realize how deeply you've been influenced, you start to take back control. You stop following the signal of fear. You stop allowing external chaos to dictate your internal state. You begin to notice that when your energy is clear, life itself becomes more fluid, more responsive, more intelligent. This isn't magic. It's resonance. When your thoughts and feelings become coherent, when they vibrate at a stable frequency, you send a strong signal into the field, and the field, which is neutral but intelligent, reflects it back. You've seen this happen, even if you didn't know what to call it. Moments when everything just seemed to click, when help arrived out of nowhere, when the right person appeared at the perfect time. Those weren't accidents, they were echoes, feedback from the energetic environment you're constantly interacting with. And the more coherent you become, the more consistent that feedback gets. Synchronicities become normal. Intuition becomes precise. Life begins to unfold, not because it's easier, but because you're aligned with its deeper current. But coherence isn't automatic. It requires discipline. And that word may carry a heavy charge, but here discipline isn't about punishment or rigidity. It's about mastery. It's about choosing the frequency you want to live from, moment to moment. It's about observing your own mind, not with judgment, but with awareness, and steering your attention away from distraction and into alignment. Because the truth is, most people aren't thinking. They're being thought. Their minds are loops, patterns shaped by trauma, culture, and repetition. And those loops don't just affect their mood. They affect the energy they emit, the reality they experience, the field they co-create. This is why surface-level practices like affirmations often fail. You can repeat, "I am powerful" 1,000 times, but if your emotional body is vibrating in fear or doubt, the field reads that signal, not your words. Energy doesn't respond to performance. It responds to truth. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and actions are in alignment, not just on the surface, but deep in your nervous system, your breath, your presence. That's the signal the field can work with. And once you start sending that signal consistently, you become magnetic. Opportunities shift, conversations change. You walk differently, speak differently, choose differently. Not because you're faking it, but because you're finally tuned in to your actual self. Not the programmed self, not the wounded self, but the version of you that remembers how to listen. Mental discipline, then, isn't about forcing your mind to be positive. It's about reclaiming your capacity to direct thought, to interrupt inherited narratives, to step out of the loops and broadcast something new, something intentional, something powerful. Because thought alone is not enough. It must be charged with feeling. That's what makes it potent. That's what gives it form. The field responds not just to what you think, but to what you believe and feel behind the thought. And when your belief is steady, your emotion coherent, and your intent clear, you begin to move energy on purpose. You've already done this without realizing it. Every time you focused on a fear, you drew more evidence of that fear into your life. Every time you obsessed over lack, you reinforced scarcity in your experience. Not because you were wrong or being punished, but because the field is responsive, not selective. It reflects you, all of you. That's the core principle. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is a complex, energetic broadcast made up of your dominant thoughts, emotions, and unconscious patterns. So the work is not to manipulate the field. The work is to align with it. When you start doing that, when you begin to live from a place of conscious alignment, you don't just feel better. You start seeing the world through new eyes. You stop trying to force outcomes. You learn to listen, and in that listening, reality begins to soften, to become more fluid, more intuitive. You begin to feel time differently. You start sensing shifts before they happen. You catch ideas before they're spoken. That's not magic. That's coherence. That's resonance. That's the AKASHIC field opening. As your coherence increases, something else becomes apparent. The field doesn't just respond to you, it educates you. Not in the way you're used to, not through facts or lessons or structured systems. It teaches in feelings, impressions, symbols, and sudden understanding that bypasses the analytical mind. You start to realize that you're not learning from the outside in, but remembering from the inside out. Those flashes of insight that land with more weight than thought, that's not just good guesswork. That's the field speaking through resonance. It's information arriving without analysis, bypassing logic and landing directly in the nervous system. And while it might seem spontaneous, it isn't random. It's feedback. Truth returning to you because you've finally become receptive enough to receive it. What's critical to understand here is that accessing this layer of intelligence doesn't demand belief. It demands stillness. The field is subtle. It won't force itself through the chaos of a distracted mind. It doesn't fight for your attention like a news headline or a social media notification. It whispers, and it speaks only when there's space to hear. So, you create that space, not through force, but through presence. Stillness isn't passive. It's powerful. It clears the internal static and allows awareness to deepen. In stillness, the conditioned thoughts begin to fade. The emotional turbulence starts to settle. And underneath all that noise, there's clarity. A clarity you didn't create. You accessed it. It was always there. This is why ancient practices, from meditation to breathwork to conscious movement, are not about escaping the world, but about tuning into it more precisely. When your breath slows, your brainwave state changes. You move from the hyperallic, beta state into alpha and theta frequencies, which are naturally more intuitive, receptive, and connected to the subconscious. That's the zone where the field becomes most available. It's not about zoning out. It's about tuning in. And once you start tuning in deliberately, your entire sense of reality starts to shift. You stop interpreting life as a sequence of separate events and begin to feel the connectedness of it all. The way moments flow into one another, the way choices ripple out far beyond the moment they're made. You see that every interaction, every thought, every feeling you carry is sending a message into the world around you, and the field is replying. That's what people call synchronicity, but it's more than coincidence. It's energetic feedback. It's the universe mirroring your inner state, not because it favors you, not because it's granting wishes, but because it's built to reflect. When you align with it, it aligns with you. And sometimes that alignment doesn't just bring answers, it brings discomfort. It shows you what isn't resonant, what you're still carrying that no longer fits who you're becoming. You might feel unexpected emotion rise to the surface, grief, fear, anger, sadness, not as a sign that something's wrong, but as a signal that you're clearing. The deeper you go into the field, the more clearly it reveals what's out of tune. And it doesn't do this to punish you. It does it to help you recalibrate. The field acts like a mirror, not one that shows your face, but one that reflects your frequency. And the clearer your frequency, the more accurately it reflects back to you the life you're in alignment with. When you're misaligned, the field shows that too. Not with words or punishments, but with outcomes. Friction, resistance, confusion, delay. Not to block you, but to nudge you toward coherence. And you'll know when you're becoming coherent, because life won't just feel smoother. People will start responding to you differently. You'll notice conversations going deeper, effortlessly. People who once drained your energy will drift away. New connections will emerge that feel instantly aligned, even if you've never met before. That's not chance. That's energetic filtration. You become like a finely tuned instrument. Anything dissonant either harmonizes with you or it falls away. And with that comes freedom. Not the freedom to escape life, but the freedom to shape it. You're no longer reacting to your circumstances. You're creating from a place of alignment. You're no longer asking the world to make you feel safe, loved, or worthy. You're generating those frequencies internally, and the field is responding accordingly. That's when intuition upgrades. No longer just gut feelings or vague impressions, it becomes a full-bodied knowing. A guidance system you begin to trust more than logic. You'll find yourself thinking about someone and then getting a message from them. You'll speak a desire out loud and find it fulfilled days later. You'll move through decisions with a clarity that feels effortless. This is not fantasy. It's what happens when your energy becomes clear, steady, and aligned with truth. But don't mistake this for perfection. You don't have to be flawless to access the field. You don't have to be a monk or live in isolation or erase every negative thought you've ever had. The field doesn't respond to how good you are. It responds to how real you are, how present, how emotionally honest, how internally clear. You access it not by being pure, but by being aligned. It doesn't require rituals or specific beliefs. It requires coherence, clarity, intention. And that's where the deeper layers of transformation begin. Because the more time you spend in coherence, the harder it becomes to fall back into your old patterns. Your old programming doesn't resonate the same way anymore. You can still feel fear, but you're no longer ruled by it. You can experience doubt, but it doesn't override your inner signal. You become emotionally resilient, not because nothing touches you, but because you now have an anchor deeper than thought. That anchor is the field. And as you anchor into it more deeply, your reality begins to take shape from the inside out. Time starts behaving differently. You may feel events before they happen, You may begin to sense timelines, possibilities, and outcomes in a non-linear way, not in fantasy, but in felt experience. The future becomes less about guessing and more about alignment. You're not predicting outcomes, you're magnetizing them. And that magnetism doesn't come from force, it comes from frequency. The more aligned your internal state is with what you're calling in, the faster it arrives. And when it doesn't, you don't panic. You realign, you trust the signal, because the deeper truth is this: the field always answers. It just answers in resonance, not in language. It doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to what you consistently vibrate. And your vibration is made up of your beliefs, your thoughts, your emotions, and the stories you've internalized, many of which are running unconsciously. 2, as your coherence deepens, those unconscious programs begin to surface. You might notice patterns that have ruled your life for years. Scarcity, shame, unworthiness, rising up for inspection. And instead of pushing them away, you meet them, you observe them, you clear them, not because you're fixing yourself, but because you're creating space for a new signal. And once that signal is stable, something beautiful happens. You stop needing to chase anything. You stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing the external world to validate your inner one. You start living as the frequency you once hoped to find. That's the real power of energetic alignment. You're not becoming someone new. You're peeling away what never belonged in the first place. And as more people begin to live from this place, the world starts to change. Because coherence is contagious. Just as fear spreads from one person to another, so does calm, so does presence, so does alignment. You've felt this before. You've been around someone who radiated such stillness, such clarity, that you felt better just by being near them. That's field coherence. That's someone who's broadcasting a signal strong enough to influence the space around them. And you can become that person, not by pretending, not by performing, but by aligning. This is the opposite of control. You're not manipulating energy to get what you want. You're becoming a vessel through which energy can move freely. You're no longer the noise, you're the instrument. And as you live from that awareness, the world doesn't become perfect, it becomes responsive. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what am I broadcasting right now? You stop seeing your circumstances as punishments or rewards, and start seeing them as reflections of your signal. That doesn't mean you blame yourself when things go wrong. It means you take responsibility for your frequency. And from there, you create again. Deliberately, lovingly, powerfully. Because now you understand what was hidden from you for so long. Not because it was too complicated, but because it was too liberating. You don't need to seek truth in far-off places. You are wired for it. The field isn't out there. It's in you, around you, through you. And the more you live in alignment with it, the more natural it becomes. The AKASHIC field doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for resonance, for stillness, for honesty. And as you offer those things, the field opens. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, but with grace, clarity, and unmistakable presence. You don't need to be spiritual. You don't need to be enlightened. You just need to be willing to feel what's real. And as you do, you'll remember, you've never been disconnected. You were simply distracted. Now you're not. Once you realize how deeply connected you are to the field, everything shifts. Not just your thoughts, but the way you relate to life itself. The world doesn't feel quite so chaotic anymore. That constant search for meaning, the pressure to perform, the chase for approval, those impulses start to fade, not because you've lost ambition, but because something quieter and more truthful begins to guide you from within. And here's the paradox. The field was never locked away, never hidden in some distant corner of the cosmos. It's not waiting for you in a monastery, or on a mountaintop, or in the words of some spiritual authority. It's always been here, in the space between your thoughts, in the beat of your heart, in the still moments you used to overlook. You are taught to look everywhere except where it actually lives, within your awareness. And the more you drop into presence, the more you remember that this connection doesn't require credentials, rituals, or validation. It requires one thing: your return. Return to the quiet, to the signal, to the part of yourself that never stopped listening, even when your conscious mind did. That's where the real shift happens. Not through learning more, but by stripping away everything that told you didn't already know. The world you've grown up in wasn't built to support that kind of clarity. In fact, almost everything around you has been engineered to dull it. Entertainment keeps your attention fractured. Advertising keeps your self-worth externalized. Institutions tell you to trust systems, not your own perception. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's structural conditioning. And once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. Take media, for example. It doesn't simply inform, it trains your nervous system to be in a constant state of mild threat. News stories, marketing, even entertainment. Most of it is designed to trigger emotional charge, fear, outrage, insecurity, urgency. Because a person in an emotionally charged state is easier to influence, easier to sell to, easier to manage. But more importantly, they're energetically unstable, and unstable energy can't connect to the field clearly. That's the game. Keep people in a loop of reaction and distraction, and they'll never remember their power. Education plays a role too. You're taught what to think, not how to think. You're rewarded for memorizing facts, not for cultivating inner awareness. There's no curriculum for energetic intelligence, no course on resonance, no class on how to read your own field. Why? Because the moment you start interpreting reality through the lens of your own consciousness, instead of someone else's framework, you become harder to program. You become independent, self-sensing, internally guided. And internally guided people are inconvenient to systems that rely on external authority. Even religion, in many of its institutional forms, has contributed to the disconnect. Not because spirituality is flawed, but because once belief structures become rigid, they begin to control. You're taught that divinity is distant, that guidance must come through intermediaries, that questioning is dangerous. And yet, if you strip away the dogma, nearly every spiritual tradition points to the same truth: that the divine lives within, that the soul is connected to something eternal, and that stillness is the path back to remembering. But those teachings have been buried beneath hierarchy, ritual, fear, and obedience. The inner technology of the human spirit, the ability to tune into the field directly, was treated as heresy, as madness, as imagination, because if people could access truth directly, they wouldn't need gatekeepers, they wouldn't need permission. Even mainstream science, despite its brilliance, has been cautious in exploring the intersection of energy, mind, and matter. The discoveries that could validate what mystics have always known, those are often marginalized, underfunded, or misinterpreted. But make no mistake, the research is there. We know now that intention can affect biological systems, that focused thought can influence random number generators, that human emotion can shape the electromagnetic field of the body. We've seen that water holds memory, that observation changes quantum outcomes, that consciousness might not be produced by the brain, but channeled through it. These aren't fantasies. These are documented anomalies, ignored not because they're false, but because they complicate the narrative. And that's what you were born into. A reality curated for convenience, not to liberate your awareness, but to limit it, not to reflect your power, but to obscure it. But here's the part they can't suppress. The field never stops calling. It doesn't yell, it doesn't demand, but it waits, patiently, in the silence between your distractions, in the moments you catch your breath, in the space between thought and action. It never left, you just stopped noticing. But the moment you return to it, even briefly, it meets you without resistance. And when that reunion happens, your life doesn't need to become dramatic to become meaningful. You won't levitate, you won't glow, but you will begin to live differently. You'll become more deliberate, more attuned, more present. You'll stop defaulting to panic when plans fall apart. You'll stop outsourcing your worth. You'll stop chasing life and start listening to it. Because now you know you are not at the mercy of your reality. You are in relationship with it. The field is responding to you as you respond to yourself. And that's the pivot. You stop asking, what's happening to me? And start asking, what's moving through me? You stop trying to control outcomes and start becoming intentional with your inner frequency. You stop playing the role you were given and begin writing your own. That doesn't mean you won't feel fear, but you'll recognize it for what it is, a vibration, not an identity. It doesn't mean you'll always feel certain, but you'll understand that doubt isn't a dead end. It's an invitation to deepen alignment. You'll begin to hold life more lightly, not because you care less, but because you trust more. Trust becomes your compass. Not blind faith, but earned trust. Built through consistent experience, subtle confirmations, and the quiet echo of your own knowing being reflected back in your reality. That's the gift of tuning into the field. Life stops feeling like a riddle and starts feeling like a conversation. You stop wondering if you're crazy for sensing what you do, and you start recognizing those subtle hits as guidance. You stop explaining your intuition away and start honoring it. And from that place, everything opens. Because now you're aligned. And in alignment, you don't chase what's meant for you. You attract it through resonance. You don't force your desires into being. You allow them to meet you because you've become the energetic match. This is what sovereignty feels like. Not isolation, not superiority, but inner authorship. You no longer live according to what others think is possible. You live according to the energy you are now consciously choosing. And that choice begins reshaping your reality. This is why reclaiming your connection to the field isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. Because when individuals start living from this place, systems built on fear, lack, and dependency begin to dissolve. You can't sell insecurity to someone who knows their worth. You can't manipulate someone who trusts their own signal. You can't control someone who's no longer looking for approval outside themselves. So yes, there's resistance to this knowledge because it changes everything. This doesn't require a revolution of force. It spreads through frequency, through example, through presence. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to become the clarity they forgot was possible. When you embody coherence, when you live as someone who remembers, your presence becomes an invitation, not in words, but in energy. And that ripple can't be stopped. This is what they never told you, that your energy isn't just part of you. It's the very mechanism through which you experience and shape life. That your thoughts, emotions, and intentions aren't private, they're participatory. That you are not a receiver of truth, you are a transmitter of it. You don't have to do anything to be worthy of this connection. You are it. Always were. So now the only question is, what will you do with that knowing? Because the moment you stop being distracted, the moment you stop treating your intuition like an afterthought, the moment you choose to observe your reality as a field of feedback, not fate, you begin to walk differently, speak differently, live differently. And as you do, the old noise falls away, not because you rejected it, but because it simply doesn't match anymore. You've become a signal tower, clear, coherent, intentional. You've stopped mimicking noise and started broadcasting truth. And the field responds. It always does. So, if you're ready to go deeper, to explore this connection not just in concept but in practice, you're not alone. That's why we created Insights Academy, to share what we can't always say openly. We go beyond surface teachings. We explore the real mechanics of energy, alignment, and conscious field interaction. And as a thank you for joining us, you'll receive a digital copy of The Kabbalion, a guide to the core principles behind this work. Because this path isn't about collecting more information. It's about returning to something you never truly lost. The access point was never out there. It was always in you. You don't have to search anymore. You just have to listen. And the next time you feel that quiet pull, that strange knowing, that moment of synchronicity, that wave of emotion out of nowhere, remember this: you're not imagining it, you're remembering it. Welcome back